On November 23, 2026, at my daughter's wedding reception, my new in-law stood in front of 300 guests and said, "It's remarkable that Imani finally has what she deserves. A real family with resources, unlike what her mother could provide with her limited means." I didn't cry. I didn't stand up and shout. I didn't leave the room. I smiled. Then I said, "Thank you, Harrison. That was beautiful." But what he didn't know, what nobody in that ballroom knew, was that I'd been waiting 23 years, 4 months, and 8 days for that exact moment. And in the next hour, I was going to show him that the limited means woman he'd just humiliated had something he could never buy. The truth about how 14 men died, including my husband, and proof that he was about to do it all over again. My name is Leona Marie Green. I'm 67 years old, and this is the story of how I rebuilt my life from ashes, raised my daughter alone, and brought down the man who killed her father, using nothing but patience, evidence, and the engineering skills he assumed a black widow from the coal mines would never have. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. This story needs to be told, and every voice that shares it helps make sure men like Harrison Whitmore can never hide behind their wealth and power again. The Gillette Grand Hotel ballroom was everything I'd never imagined for my daughter's wedding. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Wyoming plains, crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my annual salary, 300 guests in designer clothes and expensive jewelry. The Whitmore side of the room, 250 people, looked like a Fortune 500 shareholder meeting. Our side, maybe 50 people, looked like a Sunday church service. I sat at table 17 near the back. Not at the head table with family, not even in the first 10 rows. Table 17 between the emergency exit and the serving station, where the catering staff kept bumping my chair with their carts. My best friend Ruby Washington sat beside me, wearing the purple dress we'd found at Macy's 2 months ago on sale. She'd driven up from Casper that morning, 4 hours each way, because she knew I'd need someone. "You okay, honey?" Ruby whispered, squeezing my hand under the table. "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. I watched Harrison Whitmore III at the head table, 65 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost $8,000. He was laughing with the guests at his table, all white faces, all wealthy, all completely unaware of what was about to happen. My daughter Imani sat beside her new husband Ethan, wearing the ivory Vera Wang dress that cost $32,000. I know because I saw the receipt when I helped her pick it up from the alterations shop. She looked beautiful. She also looked terrified. I'd seen that look before. It's the same look I had 23 years ago when they told me my husband wasn't coming home. The jazz trio finished their set. Servers cleared the dinner plates, filet mignon that I could barely taste, roasted vegetables that stuck in my throat. I could feel the tension building. Everyone could. That moment before the toasts when you know something important is about to be said. Harrison stood up. The room went quiet immediately. That's the kind of power he had. The kind that makes 300 people stop talking just because you're standing. He picked up his champagne glass. Cristal, probably. $2,300 a bottle. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice carried across the ballroom without a microphone. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate this joyous occasion." I reached into my purse and touched the small object I'd carried every day for 23 years, 4 months, and 8 days. A mechanical drafting pencil, worn smooth from decades of handling, with an engraving barely visible anymore. Build to last. It had belonged to my husband, James Alexander Green. He'd used it every day at his job as a mine safety inspector at Silver Creek Mine, the same mine where he died on January 15th, 2003 at 11:34 p.m., when Shaft C collapsed because someone had decided that grade 40 steel was good enough instead of the required grade 60. That someone was standing at the head table, about to give a speech. "I want to talk about family," Harrison continued, and I saw Imani's shoulders tighten. "About what it truly means to provide for a child, to give them the foundation they deserve." Here it comes, I thought. 23 years ago, tragedy struck our community. Good, hard-working men died at Silver Creek Mine. Among them was James Green, Imani's father. He paused, letting that sink in. A man who left behind a 3-month-old daughter and a woman who tried her best. Ruby's hand tightened on mine. I kept my face neutral. "Leona Green worked hard, I'll give her that," Harrison said, and his tone made it clear what he thought of my work. But raising a child requires more than just determination. It requires resources, stability, the kind of security that comes from family wealth, from generations of careful stewardship and success. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Let him finish. Today, I'm grateful that Imani finally has what every child deserves, what she was denied for so long. A real family. He raised his glass higher. The Whitmore name carries weight in this state. It opens doors. It provides opportunities that others simply cannot offer. Someone at his table laughed. A woman in a diamond necklace that probably cost more than my house. "So let's raise our glasses," Harrison said, looking directly at me across the 30 feet of polished floor between us. "To Imani, finally finding the stability, the security, the life she was denied growing up. To the future she'll build with my son, under the protection of our family legacy." Scattered applause, reluctant glass raising. I could hear the discomfort in the room. Even the Whitmore guests knew this was wrong. I stood up. The room went silent. Even the catering staff stopped moving. Harrison's smile flickered for just a second, but I saw it. He hadn't expected me to respond. "That was beautiful, Mr. Whitmore," I said, he said, my voice steady and clear. "Really moving. But before we drink to the future, I think everyone here should understand what that legacy you mentioned was actually built on." I walked toward the center of the room where everyone could see me. My purple dress, the one I'd bought at JCPenney for $89 on sale, probably looked cheap compared to the designer gowns around me. But I stood tall. At 67 years old, I'd earned every gray hair and every wrinkle, and I wasn't ashamed of either. "You talk about providing for children," I said, "about resources and security and family legacies, but you left out some important details about how you built that legacy." I caught the eye of Ashley Brooks, the investigative journalist from the Gillette Gazette, sitting 3 tables over with her camera ready. And I think it's time everyone knew the truth. But this story doesn't start at that wedding reception. It starts 23 years earlier, on the coldest night of my life, January 15th, 2003, a Tuesday. I was 44 years old, sitting in our living room at 847 Maple Street, apartment 2B, nursing 3-month-old Imani while I waited for James to come home from his shift at Silver Creek Mine. The apartment was small, just 850 square feet, but it was ours. Rent was $675 a month, and we'd lived there for 3 years, saving up for a down payment on a house. I'd made James's favorite dinner, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, still warming in the oven. The local gospel station played softly on the radio. Imani had just fallen asleep in my arms, her tiny hand curled around my finger. The phone rang at 10:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I looked at the clock on the wall, the one with the blue frame that James had bought me for our 5th anniversary, and thought, "That's early. He never calls before his shift ends at midnight." "Hello?" "Leona." It was Ruby Washington, my best friend since high school, her voice tight and scared. "There's been an accident at Silver Creek. They're asking all families to come to the site, right now." My blood went cold. "What kind of accident?" "I don't know. They won't say. But Dennis called me 5 minutes ago from the mine, told me to get there fast. Leona, you need to go, now." I don't remember the drive. The next thing I knew, I was standing behind a chain-link fence with about 40 other women, wives, mothers, sisters, watching orange and red emergency lights strobe across the darkness. The sirens were deafening. Ambulances, fire trucks, police cruisers, all screaming into the night like wounded animals. The air tasted like diesel and dust, so thick I could barely breathe. Portable floodlights threw harsh shadows across the mine entrance. The main shaft had collapsed. A woman beside me was crying, her hands gripping the fence so tight the metal cut into her palms. I wanted to cry too, but my body had gone completely numb except for my hands, which burned from gripping the frozen chain link. A mine official, white, middle-aged, wearing a hard hat, stood on a pickup truck bed and shouted through a megaphone. "Structural failure in Shaft C! 14 men were down there when it happened." 14 men. I looked around at the 40 women behind the fence. Most of us were Black or Latino, the wives of the men who did the dangerous work underground while the white executives sat in offices above ground. "We've got rescue teams working," the official shouted. "Stay back. This is an active rescue operation." They brought out 7 men in the first 2 hours. Each time the rescue teams emerged from the mine entrance, we all surged forward, desperate, hoping. Each time I scanned the faces covered in dust and blood, looking for James. He wasn't among them. By dawn, they stopped bringing anyone out. A man in a suit, I later learned he was Harrison Whitmore's assistant, some executive from Montgomery Energy Corporation, the parent company that owned Silver Creek, stood on the same pickup truck and told us the shaft was too unstable to continue rescue operations. "We're deeply sorry for your loss," he said. Past tense. Your loss. I stood there holding Imani against my chest, feeling her small heartbeat against mine, and watched the sun come up over the wreckage. James Alexander Green, my husband of 6 years, my daughter's father, the man who'd proposed to me at the Wyoming State Fair with a ring he'd saved 8 months to buy, was gone. He was 39 years old. The official story came out 3 days later in the Gillette Gazette. Natural seismic activity triggers mine collapse. These tragedies, while rare, are an inherent risk in mining operations. Whitmore Energy extends deepest condolences to the affected families. Each family received $50,000 from the company's insurance policy, $50,000 for a husband and father, $50,000 to raise a 3-month-old baby alone, $50,000 to cover a lifetime of birthdays and graduations and weddings he'd never see. But I'd worked in construction before Imani was born. I understood load-bearing structures. I knew what properly reinforced steel beams could withstand, and something about the official story didn't add up. 1 week after the funeral, January 28, 2003, I walked into the Whitmore Energy field office on Route 59 and asked to see the incident report. The man behind the desk barely looked up from his computer. White, maybe 30 years old, wearing a polo shirt with the company logo. "That's internal company business, ma'am. You don't have authorization." "I'm the widow of James Green," I said. "He died in your mine. I have a right to see what happened. The report's been filed with the state. You can request it through official channels. Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do." He went to the bathroom 5 minutes later. The incident report folder was sitting on his desk, 4th in a stack of files. I had maybe 90 seconds. I flipped through quickly, looking for anything unusual. Most of it was technical jargon and official stamps. Then I saw it on page 7. Cost reduction measures approved for Shaft C expansion project. I pulled out my phone. A Nokia flip phone. The camera was terrible quality, but I took 3 photos of that page. Support beam specifications. Original requirement grade 60 steel, 8-inch I-beams, installed at 4-foot intervals. Approved change, grade 40 steel, 6-inch I-beams, installed at 6-foot intervals. Estimated cost savings, $340,000. Approved by H. Whitmore III, VP of Operations, November 3, 2002. I heard footsteps, shoved the folder back into the stack, walked out before he returned. That night I sat at our kitchen table, the same table where James and I had eaten dinner every night, where he'd done his safety inspection reports, where we'd planned our daughter's future, and looked at those blurry photos on my tiny phone screen. Grade 40 instead of grade 60, 6-inch beams instead of 8-inch, 6-foot intervals instead of 4-foot, all to save $340,000. My husband and 13 other men had died because Harrison Whitmore III, Vice President of Operations at Whitmore Energy, had decided that weaker steel was good enough. I wanted to go to the police immediately, wanted to call every news station in Wyoming, wanted to stand on the steps of the state capitol and scream the truth until someone listened. But I was a 44-year-old black widow with a 3-month-old baby, no college degree, no money except the $50,000 payout that had to last us years, and no proof except 3 blurry photos on a cheap phone. And Harrison Whitmore was a wealthy white man whose family had owned half of Campbell County for 3 generations. Who would they believe? I made a decision that night. I would keep those photos hidden. I would keep my mouth shut. I would raise my daughter. And I would wait. Because the truth about powerful men is this: they always do it again. And when Harrison Whitmore cut corners again, when he endangered more lives for profit again, I would be ready. I would gather evidence. Real evidence. Professional evidence. the kind that couldn't be dismissed or explained away, and then I would destroy him. I put James's drafting pencil in my purse that night, January 28th, 2003. I've carried it with me every single day since. The first year after James died was pure survival. Imani would wake up crying at 2 a.m., and I'd rock her in the dark while my arms ached from exhaustion. I'd taken a job at Henderson Engineering in downtown Gillette, drafting blueprints for commercial buildings, $42,000 a year. Not bad for someone with only an associate's degree in architectural drafting from Casper Community College, but not enough for daycare. Ruby Washington watched Imani most days. Ruby had lost her husband Dennis in the Silver Creek collapse too. They'd found his body on day 3, and neither of us could afford to fall apart, so we held each other up. I'd drop Imani at Ruby's house at 6:30 a.m., work until 6 p.m., pick her up, feed her, bathe her, put her to bed, then collapse myself. Some nights I'd sit in the kitchen and cry. Some nights I was too tired to cry. Years 2 through 5 blurred together. Imani's first word was mama, spoken in the cereal aisle at Safeway when she was 14 months old. Her first day of kindergarten, she wore a yellow gingham dress Ruby had found at the church clothing exchange. I stayed in my car for 10 minutes after drop-off, hands on the steering wheel, convincing myself she'd be fine. She was always fine. Tougher than I gave her credit for. But at work, things were harder than I'd expected. I was the only black woman engineer at Henderson Engineering. Out of 15 engineers, 12 were white men, 2 were white women, and there was me. I got used to having my calculations questioned. Used to hearing, "Are you sure about this?" when my white male colleagues never heard it. Used to being passed over for promotions while less experienced men moved up. But I kept my head down, did excellent work, double-checked everything, triple-checked everything, because I knew I had to be twice as good to be considered half as competent. When Imani was 7 years old, she asked me about her father. We were sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework, a family tree assignment for 2nd grade. She had to fill in names and draw pictures. "Mommy, what was Daddy like?" I went to the drawer where I kept James's things and brought out his drafting pencil. Let her hold it. Feel the weight of it. "He built things," I told her. "Good things, strong things, things that kept people safe." She traced the engraving with her small finger. "Build to last. What does that mean?" "It means when you build something, you build it right. You don't cut corners. You don't do it the cheap way. You build it to last forever." Did Daddy build me? My throat closed. "Yes, baby. You're the best thing he ever built." She kept that pencil on her desk after that. Would carry it to school sometimes in her backpack, like a talisman. By the time Imani was 12, I'd been promoted to senior engineer at Henderson, $58,000 a year. We moved to a better apartment, 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, on Elm Street. Rent was $950 a month, but Imani finally had her own room. Middle school was hard. Other kids had fathers who showed up to basketball games, who taught them to drive, who walked them through life's milestones. Imani never complained, but I saw it in the way she'd go quiet on Father's Day, the way she'd watch other girls with their dads and quickly look away. I picked up side work to make ends meet. Residential inspections, consultation jobs, anything that paid. Some Saturday mornings, Imani would come with me to job sites wearing an oversized hard hat and carrying a clipboard. "Why do you check everything twice?" she asked once, watching me measure load-bearing walls in a new construction home. "Because someone's going to live here," I said. "Someone's going to trust that this place will keep them safe. I won't sign off on anything that might fail them." She understood more than I'd said. Smart kid. Always was. High school brought new challenges. Boys, parties, the constant pull of a world I couldn't quite protect her from. But Imani stayed focused. Dean's List every semester, captain of the debate team, early acceptance to the University of Wyoming with a full scholarship. Those college years nearly broke my budget. Even with scholarships, there were books, fees, living expenses. But she thrived. Engineering major, civil engineering like me. She'd call on Sunday evenings and tell me about her classes, her professors, her projects, and I'd hear James in her voice. That same excitement about building things that matter. May 18th, 2024, University of Wyoming graduation. I sat in the bleachers at War Memorial Stadium and watched my daughter walk across that stage in her cap and gown. Imani Leona Green, Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering, summa cum laude, I cried. Not sad tears this time. Proud tears. That evening, Imani showed me the gift she'd bought herself. A silver drafting pencil with an engraving. Build to last. I want to build things that matter, Mom, she said. Like you, like Dad. I hugged her tight and thought, this is what James and I built together. Not just buildings or bridges, but this strong, brilliant woman who knows the value of a solid foundation. But what I didn't tell her, what I couldn't tell her, was that for the past 5 years, I'd been living a double life. Starting in 2019, I'd been working with attorney Kenneth Michael Hayes from Chicago. Kenneth was 52 years old, a civil rights lawyer who specialized in corporate negligence cases, and he'd contacted me after reading about Silver Creek in a law journal article about mining disasters. Mrs. Green, he'd said on our first phone call, I believe we can build a case against Whitmore Energy, but I need your help. The problem was the statute of limitations. In Wyoming, wrongful death cases have a 2-year limit. By 2019, we were 16 years past the accident. We couldn't sue for Silver Creek itself. But if we could prove a pattern of negligence, if we could show that Harrison Whitmore was still cutting corners, still endangering lives, still choosing profit over safety, then we could file a RICO case. Racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. It's usually used for mobsters, but it applies to systematic corporate crime too. RICO has a 10-year statute of limitations from the last offense. If Harrison was still doing what he did at Silver Creek, we could connect the old crimes to the new ones and prosecute everything. Find me evidence of current violations, Kenneth told me. Then we can bring justice for your husband. So I became a detective. By day, I was Leona Green, senior civil engineer at Henderson Engineering, 63 years old, respected in my field, quietly doing my job. By night, I was a woman on a mission. I started following Whitmore Energy's permit applications. Every mining company has to file with the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality. Those documents are public record. I'd go to the state office in Cheyenne, 2 hours away, and request files. Take photos, study them at home. In 2021, I found it. Summit Ridge Mine Expansion, 15 miles north of Gillette. The permit application was filed March 3, 2021. I read through the technical specifications. Support beams, grade 50 steel, 6-inch I-beams, installed at 5-foot intervals. My hands started shaking. Not grade 60, which current regulations required for that depth and load. Grade 50, just barely enough to pass inspection, just enough to save money. And the environmental impact assessment? Quarterly safety inspections instead of monthly. Delayed reporting of structural concerns. All the same patterns from Silver Creek. I called Kenneth Hayes immediately. I found it, I said. He's doing it again. Over the next 3 years, 2021 to 2024, I built a case. I became an expert witness for mining safety cases in 3 different states. I learned everything about steel specifications, load calculations, geological surveys. I contacted Ashley Brooks, an investigative journalist at the Gillette Gazette, whose brother had died in an industrial accident in Colorado. Help me expose this, I told her. Ashley was 35 years old, white, driven, and she'd been looking for a big story. This was it. We needed an inside source, someone at Whitmore Energy who could provide documentation that I couldn't access from public records. That's when we found Thomas Michael Rivera. Thomas was 48 years old, Latino, and he'd been CFO at Whitmore Energy for 12 years. He'd signed off on the Summit Ridge permits, but he'd kept copies of everything. Internal emails, financial records, offshore accounts, every piece of paper that showed Harrison Whitmore prioritizing profit over human lives. Thomas contacted me in January 2025. I have 3 daughters, he told me. I can't keep being complicit in this. If something happens at Summit Ridge, I won't be able to live with myself. By October 2025, we had everything we needed. Bank records showing how Harrison moved money to offshore accounts. Engineering reports showing the deliberate use of substandard materials. Internal emails where Harrison explicitly told Thomas to keep costs down. I don't care how. We had enough to destroy him. We just needed the right moment, the right stage, maximum visibility, and then my daughter called me with news that changed everything. October 12th, 2025, a Sunday afternoon. I was at a construction site in Campbell County, inspecting foundation work for a new elementary school. The concrete mixers were roaring, workers were shouting, and my phone started buzzing in my pocket. Imani's photo lit up the screen. I stepped away from the noise to answer. "Hey, baby. What's up?" "Mom." Her voice was breathless, excited in a way I hadn't heard in years. "I have to tell you something. I met someone." My chest loosened. This was good news. My daughter, 26 years old, brilliant and beautiful, deserved happiness, deserved love. "That's wonderful, honey. Tell me about him." "His name is Ethan. We met at an environmental consulting conference in Denver 3 months ago. Mom, he's amazing. He's smart and kind, and he actually listens when I talk about work. And," she paused, and I could hear her smile through the phone, "I think he might be the one." Tears prickled my eyes. This was what I'd worked for, her future, her happiness. "I can't wait to meet him," I said, meaning it. "His last name is Whitmore, Ethan Whitmore. Doesn't that sound perfect? Imani Whitmore." The concrete mixer behind me ground on, but I couldn't hear it anymore. My entire world had narrowed to those 2 words. Ethan Whitmore. "Mom? You still there?" "Yeah," I managed. My voice sounded normal somehow. "I'm here. Sorry, construction noise. That's great, baby. Really great. I have to run. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Love you." The line went dead. I stood there in the construction site, phone still pressed to my ear, watching workers pour concrete into forms that would hold up classroom walls, making sure the foundation would be strong, making sure children would be safe. Whitmore. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull up Google. I typed, "Ethan Whitmore, Wyoming." LinkedIn profile. Ethan Alexander Whitmore, age 28. Environmental consultant based in Gillette, Wyoming. Bachelor's degree in environmental science from Colorado State University. Photo of a young man with sandy blonde hair and an easy smile, wearing a fleece jacket. I scrolled down. Employment history. Education. And then? Father, Harrison Whitmore III, Executive Chairman, Whitmore Energy Corporation. There was a photo from a charity gala. Harrison and Ethan in tuxedos, father's hand on son's shoulder, both smiling at the camera. Behind them, through the windows, I could see mountains I recognized. The same peaks I'd stared at for 6 hours on January 15th, 2003, while my husband died underground. The caption read, "Harrison Whitmore III and son Ethan at the annual Mining Industry Foundation dinner, Sheridan, Wyoming, 2024. I zoomed in on Ethan's face. Kind eyes, genuine smile. He looked nothing like his father. Softer, warmer, but the resemblance was there in the jaw, in the shoulders. My daughter was in love with Harrison Whitmore's son, the man I'd spent 5 years building a case against, the man whose crimes I was about to expose, the man I was planning to destroy, and my daughter had no idea. My phone rang again. Ruby, Washington. "Leona, you okay? You sound weird in your voicemail." I hadn't realized I'd left a voicemail. Must have pocket-dialed her. "Ruby," I said, "she's dating him. Imani is dating Harrison Whitmore's son." Silence on the other end. Then, "Jesus Christ, Leona. What do I do?" "You tell her," Ruby said immediately. "You tell her everything. About James, about the investigation, about what Harrison did. You tell her before this goes any further." "She won't believe me," I said. "She'll think I'm trying to sabotage her happiness, think I'm some bitter old woman who can't let go of the past." "Then you make her believe you. You show her the evidence." "I can't." My voice broke. "If I show her now, if I tell her everything, she'll go to Ethan. And Ethan might tell his father. And Harrison will bury everything before we can file the case. He'll destroy the evidence, pay off Thomas, make it all disappear." Ruby was quiet for a long moment. "So what are you going to say?" "Nothing," I whispered. "I'm going to keep investigating, and I'm going to pray that I can expose Harrison before she gets in any deeper." But I was already too late. Because when Thanksgiving came 5 weeks later, Imani brought Ethan home to meet me. And I had to sit across the dinner table from Harrison Whitmore's son, serve him sweet potato pie I'd made from scratch, and smile while my daughter glowed with happiness. Ethan was polite, kind. He asked about my work, complimented my cooking, talked about his job helping mining companies develop better environmental practices. "I really believe we can make the industry safer," he said. "My father's generation did things a certain way, but we can do better now." I wanted to scream at him. "Your father killed 14 men because he used cheaper steel. He's doing it again right now at Summit Ridge." Instead, I said, "That's wonderful, Ethan. The industry needs young people with integrity." After dinner, when Ethan was helping Amani clean dishes in the kitchen, my daughter pulled me aside. "So, what do you think?" I looked at her face. My baby girl, 26 years old, a brilliant engineer with her father's eyes and my determination, and I lied. "He seems very nice, honey. I'm happy for you." But I wasn't happy. I was terrified. Because on February 3rd, 2026, 3 months later, Amani showed up at my door with news that made everything infinitely more complicated. She was engaged to Ethan Whitmore, and she was pregnant. February 3rd, 2026, a Monday morning. Imani came to my apartment at 9:47 a.m., letting herself in with the key I'd given her years ago. She was holding her left hand at an odd angle, trying to act casual and failing completely. I looked up from the Summit Ridge documents I'd been reviewing, spread across my kitchen table like always, and quickly swept them into a folder. "Mom, you're home. I thought you had a site inspection this morning." "Canceled," I said, standing up. "Contractor called in sick. What's going on?" She held out her hand. The diamond caught the morning light streaming through my kitchen window. Not huge, maybe a carat, but elegant, simple. A platinum band with a round solitaire. "Connor proposed last night," she said. Her smile was so bright it hurt to look at. "Mom, I said yes." I should have hugged her immediately, should have squealed and examined the ring and asked about the proposal. Instead, I stood there, calculating timelines. They'd been dating 4 months. She was 26 years old. This was fast. Too fast. "Mom?" Her smile faltered. "Aren't you happy?" I forced myself to move, pulled her into an embrace. "Of course I am, baby. Of course I am." But over her shoulder, I could see the folder on my table. The one with Summit Ridge, Whitmore Energy, written on the tab. The one with evidence that could send her future father-in-law to prison for 25 years. She pulled back, studying my face. She'd always been able to read me too well. "There's something else," she said, and her hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. "I need to tell you something." My heart dropped. "I'm pregnant." The words came out in a rush. 6 weeks. We didn't plan it, but... She looked up at me, and I saw fear mixed with hope in her eyes. "Mom, please say something." I sat down heavily in the kitchen chair. My daughter, my brilliant, careful daughter who'd gotten a full scholarship to college, who'd graduated summa cum laude, who had a bright future ahead of her, was pregnant with Harrison Whitmore's grandchild. The baby would be born into that family, would carry their name, would be leverage. Does Ethan know? He's thrilled. Scared, but thrilled. She sat down across from me. "Mom, I know this isn't how you raised me. I know you wanted me to have everything established first, career, marriage, house, but I love him, and I really think we can do this." I reached across the table and took her hand, looked at this woman I'd raised alone for 26 years, this strong, brilliant woman who had no idea she was about to marry into a family built on blood money. "Savannah, listen to me carefully. Have you spent much time with Ethan's father? With Harrison?" Her expression shifted, became guarded. "A few times. Why are you asking this? What do you think of him? He's intense, very business-focused, but he's been nice to me." She pulled her hand back. "Mom, what is this about? Has he asked you to sign anything? Any documents related to his company?" "No, why would he?" Her voice rose slightly. "Mom, if this is about you thinking they're too wealthy for us..." "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what?" She stood up. "Because it sounds like you're trying to find problems, like you can't just be happy for me." I wanted to show her everything. The photos from 2003, the Summit Ridge permits, the evidence Ashley Brooks had gathered. But without proof that the forgeries existed, without concrete evidence of Harrison's current crimes, it would just look like a bitter widow who couldn't let go of the past. "I just want you to be careful," I said. "Promise me if anything feels wrong, if Harrison asks you to do anything that makes you uncomfortable, You'll tell me. I'm not a child, Mom. Her voice was cold now. I'm 26 years old. I'm engaged. I'm having a baby. And I wish you could just support me instead of being suspicious of everyone. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. The wedding is in 3 months, April 23rd. I hope by then you'll be able to be happy for me. The door closed. I sat alone at my kitchen table, looking at the Summit Ridge folder. I'd been so focused on bringing down Harrison Whitmore that I hadn't protected my daughter from becoming collateral damage. My phone rang. Ashley Brooks. Leona, we have a problem. A big one. Ashley arrived at my apartment 30 minutes later with her laptop and a flash drive. Thomas Rivera sent me something last night, she said, setting up on my kitchen table. Files he'd been afraid to share before, but when he heard Ethan Whitmore was engaged, he said he couldn't keep quiet anymore. She opened a folder on her laptop. Bank transfer documents. Dozens of them. Look at the signature on these. I leaned closer. Account transfers from Whitmore Holdings, LLC, to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. $8.5 million, dated over the past 18 months. The signature at the bottom read, Imani L. Green. My blood went cold. That's my daughter's signature, but she would never— I know. Ashley pulled up more documents. Environmental impact reports for Summit Ridge, safety inspection waivers, permit applications, all with her signature, all forged. How do you know they're forged? Because Thomas kept the originals. Look. She opened another file. These are the real documents, signed by Thomas as CFO, and these are the ones Harrison filed with the state. Same documents, but with Imani's name substituted. I counted quickly. 13 forged documents. $8.5 million in fraudulent transfers, all with my daughter's name attached. Why? I whispered. Why would Harrison do this? Ashley's face was grim. Insurance. If Summit Ridge fails, if there's an accident, if regulators investigate, Harrison has a fall guy, or in this case, a fall woman. Someone he thinks won't fight back because she's pregnant with his grandchild. I felt sick. He's been planning this for 18 months, since before Imani even met Ethan. Actually, I don't think so. Ashley pulled up more files. Look at the dates on these transfers. They start 3 months ago, right after Ethan and Imani announced they were dating. 3 months. Harrison had learned his son was dating the daughter of a man who died at Silver Creek, and he'd immediately started building an insurance policy. He knows who I am, I said. He knows I'm James Green's widow, and he's setting up my daughter to take the fall if his empire collapses. My phone buzzed. Kenneth Hayes, calling from Chicago. I put him on speaker. Kenneth, Ashley's here. We have a situation. I explained the forged documents. The $8.5 million. Imani's signature on everything. Kenneth was quiet for a long moment. This changes things. If we expose Harrison now, if we file charges, the first thing prosecutors will see is Imani's name all over the evidence. They'll investigate her. But the signatures are forged. Can you prove that? Beyond a reasonable doubt? Because Harrison can afford the best handwriting experts in the country. And your daughter is pregnant, engaged to his son, about to become family. It looks like she was complicit. I slumped in my chair. So what do I do? We need to catch him in the act, Kenneth said. We need him to explicitly admit the forgeries, on tape, with witnesses, something he can't explain away. Ashley was already typing. The wedding, 3 months from now, 300 witnesses, media coverage. If we can get him to reveal himself publicly, he won't confess at his son's wedding, I said. No, Ashley agreed. But he might do something else, something that shows his character, his cruelty, something that makes people question everything about him. I thought about that toast Harrison would inevitably give, the speech about family and legacy and providing for children, the subtle digs at me, the single mother who tried her best. He'll humiliate me, I said slowly. At the wedding, in front of everyone, he'll make it clear that Imani was poor and struggling, and now she's finally safe with the Whitmore family. And that's when you hit back, Kenneth said. You show everyone who Harrison Whitmore really is, the documents, the forgeries, the evidence of his crimes spanning 23 years. You destroy him in front of everyone he's ever impressed. It was risky. If Harrison had time to prepare, he could spin it, make me look like a vengeful widow with forged evidence. But if we caught him off guard, in the middle of his own performance... I'll need help, I said. You'll have it, Ashley promised. I'll coordinate with media. Make sure there are cameras. And I'll have the FBI ready, Kenneth added. We've been building the RICO case for months. If we present everything at once, old crimes, new crimes, the pattern of negligence, they can arrest him on the spot. I looked at the forged documents on Ashley's laptop, my daughter's name on page after page of lies. What about Imani? When she sees this at her wedding, she'll be devastated, Kenneth said bluntly. But she'll be safe. Once Harrison is arrested, the forgeries come to light. She's a victim, not a suspect. I thought about my daughter's face this morning, her joy, her hope, her certainty that she'd found happiness. I was about to destroy her wedding day, but if I didn't, Harrison would destroy her entire life. 10 days before the wedding, April 13th, 2026, someone knocked on my office door at Henderson Engineering at 7:43 p.m. I looked up from the Summit Ridge structural analysis I'd been reviewing. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. I was alone in the building. Mrs. Green, can I come in? Ethan Whitmore stood in my doorway, holding a folder. He looked like he'd been wearing the same clothes for days. His tie was loose, shirt wrinkled, eyes exhausted. My first instinct was to hide my work, but he was already looking at the papers spread across my desk. I know what you're doing, he said quietly. I know you're investigating my father. I stood up slowly, calculating escape routes, wondering if Harrison had sent him. And I want to help you stop him. He set the folder on my desk. Inside, Silver Creek Mine incident reports, the original documents from 2003, James's name on the casualty list, Harrison's signature approving the cost reductions. Where did you get these? I whispered. My father's private office. I've been copying his files for the past 18 months. Ethan's voice was shaking. Mrs. Green, I know what he did to your husband. I know what he's doing now at Summit Ridge, and I know he's been forging Imani's signature to set her up as a fall guy. I sank back into my chair. You've known for 18 months? I found the Silver Creek files 2 years ago. I was looking for something else, and I saw your husband's name. James Alexander Green, age 39, survived by wife Leona Marie Green and daughter Imani, age 3 months. He looked at me with something like anguish. When I met Imani at that conference, I didn't know she was your daughter. I swear I didn't know. But when she introduced me to you at Thanksgiving, when she said your full name, I realized the woman I love is the daughter of a man my father killed. Does Imani know any of this? No, I couldn't tell her. I was afraid she'd try to confront him and he'd... Ethan's voice broke. My father is dangerous, Mrs. Green. I've watched him destroy people my entire life. Anyone who threatens him, anyone who gets in his way. I couldn't risk Imani becoming a target. So you've been lying to her for months? Yes. He didn't flinch. And I'll have to live with that. But right now I need to know, are you planning to expose him at the wedding? I studied his face. He had Harrison's jawline, Harrison's build, but his eyes were different. Afraid, yes, but not cold, not calculating. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I've been working with the FBI for the past 18 months. I'm a confidential informant, and I can give you everything you need to take him down, but only if we coordinate. Only if we make sure Imani doesn't get caught in the crossfire. He pulled out more documents, offshore bank account records, internal emails where Harrison explicitly ordered Thomas Rivera to forge Imani's signatures, security camera footage from Harrison's office showing him practicing Imani's handwriting. I have video of him saying, Ethan's jaw clenched, saying if this blows up, the black girl takes the fall, her word against ours. My hands tightened on the desk. He said that. About my daughter. Yes, ma'am. On camera. 3 months ago. I looked at this young man who'd been living a double life, loving my daughter while betraying his father, keeping secrets that could destroy his family. Does your father know you're here? No, and he can't. If he suspects I'm the leak... Ethan didn't finish the sentence. I made a decision. Sit down. We have a lot of planning to do. That night, my apartment became a war room. Present. Me, Ethan, Ashley Brooks, and Kenneth Hayes via video call from Chicago. Thomas Rivera arrived at 9:15 p.m., nervous, looking over his shoulder even though we were on the 3rd floor. Kenneth laid out the strategy on the video screen. We have 2 separate cases we're combining into one RICO prosecution. First, the Silver Creek disaster in 2003, 14 counts of manslaughter, criminal negligence, fraud. Second, the Summit Ridge violations happening now, fraud, forgery, conspiracy, environmental crimes. The RICO statute lets us connect them as a pattern of criminal enterprise. What about the statute of limitations on Silver Creek? I asked. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act has a 10-year statute from the last criminal act. Since Harrison committed new crimes at Summit Ridge as recently as 6 weeks ago, we can prosecute everything, old and new, under RICO. Thomas pulled out a flash drive. I have everything. 20 years of financial records, every offshore account, every forged document, every internal email where Harrison explicitly ordered illegal activities. Ashley was already typing notes. I have media contacts at every major outlet in Wyoming. When this breaks, it'll be everywhere. But we need the right moment, Kenneth said. Maximum witnesses, minimal escape routes, somewhere Harrison can't deny or deflect. The wedding reception, I said. He's planning to give a toast. He'll humiliate me in front of 300 people. That's when we hit back. Ethan looked pained. It'll destroy the wedding. Imani is already being destroyed, I said sharply. Your father has been systematically setting her up to take the fall for his crimes. If we don't stop him now, she'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison while Harrison plays the victim. Mrs. Green is right, Kenneth said. And here's the key. We need Harrison to incriminate himself publicly. We need him to reveal his character so completely that when we present the evidence, everyone believes it. He will, I said quietly. I've known men like Harrison my whole life. They can't help themselves. They need to prove they're superior, especially to people they consider beneath them. What about Imani? Ashley asked. She doesn't know about any of this. When we expose Harrison, she'll think I sabotaged her wedding, I finished. That I'm a bitter old woman who couldn't let go of the past. That I destroyed her happiness. The room went quiet. But she'll be alive, I said. She'll be safe. She'll have a future. And eventually maybe she'll understand why I did it. Ethan's voice was small. I should tell her. Before the wedding. About Silver Creek, about the investigation, about— No, Kenneth interrupted. If Imani knows, she might try to warn Harrison. Or confront him. Or do something that tips him off. We need everyone to act naturally. That includes her. So we lie to her, Ethan said. We protect her, I corrected. There's a difference. But even as I said it, I thought about my daughter's face this morning when I'd asked too many questions. The hurt in her eyes when she thought I wasn't happy for her. I was protecting her by keeping her in the dark. Just like I'd been protecting her for 26 years by not telling her the truth about her father's death. Silence as weakness. Silence as complicity. I'd learned that lesson at Silver Creek, and I was about to teach it to Harrison Whitmore. But while we were planning Harrison's downfall, he was setting his own trap. I didn't know about it until much later, until after the wedding had collapsed into chaos and Imani finally told me the truth, sitting in a hotel room with tears streaming down her face. This is what happened. April 13th, 2026, the same day Ethan came to my office. Harrison invited Imani to lunch. Private room at the Petroleum Club, the most expensive restaurant in Gillette. Members only. Old money. White tablecloths and wine lists that cost more than my monthly rent. Imani thought it was a bonding opportunity, a chance to connect with her future father-in-law before the wedding. Harrison was already seated when she arrived, wearing the blue dress I'd helped her pick out the week before, the one that hid her barely showing pregnancy. There was a folder on the table next to his water glass. Imani, thank you for coming, Harrison said warmly. I wanted to talk to you about something important before you officially join our family. She'd sat down, nervous but hopeful. I've been hearing things, Harrison continued, his tone shifting slightly. Your mother has been asking questions, contacting journalists, making inquiries about Whitmore Energy operations. Imani's defense kicked in immediately. My mother is just protective. She's trying to sabotage this wedding. Harrison opened the folder. I think you should see what she's been involved in. He showed her the documents, the ones with her signature, Consulting contracts dated back 18 months. Bank statements showing $8.5 million transferred through an account in her name. Environmental reports for Summit Ridge with her signature at the bottom. "I didn't sign these," Imani had said, her voice shaking. "This is fraud. Someone forged my name." Harrison had smiled then, cold, calculating. "Prove it," Imani had tried to explain. She'd never worked for Whitmore Energy, never consulted on Summit Ridge, never authorized any transfers. "I believe you," Harrison had said. "But here's the problem. Your signature is on 13 legal documents. $8.5 million has moved through accounts in your name. If your mother's investigation goes anywhere, if regulators come calling, if the FBI gets involved, whose name is on all the evidence?" The reality had hit her then. She was the fall guy. "If these documents surface," Harrison had continued, "you'll be charged with fraud, money laundering, environmental crimes. You're a licensed civil engineer. You'll lose your license. You'll go to prison, pregnant, with my grandchild." "You can't do this," Imani had whispered. "I already have." Harrison had leaned back. "But here's the good news. I can make this go away. All of it. The investigation, the documents, everything. I have that much power. But I need something from you." "What?" "At the wedding reception, I'm going to give a toast. I'm going to say some things about your mother that you won't like. Personal things, criticisms, maybe a little humiliation." His tone was casual, like he was discussing the weather. "And you're going to sit there. Smile, say nothing, let it happen." "No!" Imani had started to stand up. "If you defend her, if you make a scene, if you do anything except exactly what I tell you, I'll send these documents to every regulatory agency in Wyoming. Your mother's investigation? I'll make sure she's implicated too. Criminal conspiracy, evidence tampering. I'll destroy both of you." "Ethan won't believe you," Imani had said desperately. "Won't he?" Harrison had pulled out more papers. "I have text messages, fabricated but very convincing, showing you've been communicating with someone named David Martinez for the past year. Hotel receipts, romantic messages, evidence that the baby might not be Ethan's." The cruelty of it had taken her breath away. "I'll tell him the truth," she'd said, "and I'll show him this evidence. My son has always believed me, Imani. Always. He's my son first. Your fiancé second." Imani had sat there, trapped, feeling the walls close in. "All you have to do," Harrison had said softly, "is stay quiet. One evening, one toast. Sit there, smile, let me say what I need to say about your mother. Then it's over. You marry Ethan. You have your baby. You live your life. I keep my empire. Everyone wins. Except my mother. Your mother has been trying to destroy me for 23 years. She stole confidential documents from my office the week after Silver Creek collapsed. She's been building a case against me, gathering evidence, turning people against me. This isn't about you, Imani. This is about her vendetta. And you can either protect yourself and your baby, or you can let her drag you down with her." Imani had wanted to run, wanted to call me, call Ethan, call the police. But Harrison had all the power, all the evidence, all the leverage. 48 hours, Harrison had said. Think about it. But know this, if you tell anyone about this conversation, if you warn your mother, if you do anything except agree to my terms, those documents go public immediately. And you'll spend the next 20 years in prison watching your child grow up without you. He'd left cash on the table for the lunch and walked out. Imani had sat there for 20 minutes, staring at the forged documents, trying to breathe. Then she'd made the worst decision of her life. She'd agreed to Harrison's terms. The next 10 days, April 13th to April 23rd, were the worst of Imani's life. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time Ethan touched her, she flinched. Every time I called, she let it go to voicemail. Ruby Washington, helping with wedding preparations, noticed immediately. "Baby girl, you're supposed to be glowing. You look like you're fading away." Imani had forced a smile. "Just wedding stress." But it was more than stress. It was the weight of carrying a secret that was crushing her. The knowledge that in 10 days she'd have to sit at her own wedding and watch her future father-in-law humiliate her mother publicly while she did nothing. She'd tried to call me 3 times. Picked up the phone, started to dial, then stopped. If she told me, I'd try to fight Harrison, and he'd release those documents. We'd both be destroyed. She'd written a confession letter, everything Harrison had said, everything he'd threatened, everything she'd agreed to, then burned it in her kitchen sink at 3 a.m. Pastor Diane Mitchell from our church had visited her on April 18th. "Child, I can see you're troubled," the pastor had said gently. "What's weighing on your heart?" Imani had wanted to tell her everything. Instead, she'd said, "Just pray for me, Pastor. Please pray for me." The wedding morning, April 23rd, 2026, Imani had woken up and seriously considered running away. Just disappearing. Going somewhere Harrison Whitmore couldn't find her. But she was 12 weeks pregnant. She had no money except what was in her checking account, $8,342. Harrison could find her anywhere. And if she ran, he'd send those documents to the FBI immediately. So she'd put on the $32,000 wedding dress. Let the makeup artist cover the dark circles under her eyes. Let her bridesmaids fuss over her hair. And she'd hidden a letter in her bouquet. A confession. In case something happened to her, in case Harrison decided to destroy her anyway, at least there would be evidence of what he'd done. The letter was addressed to me. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means something went wrong. Harrison Whitmore has been threatening me for 10 days. He has documents with my forged signature. He says if I defend you at the wedding, he'll destroy both of us. I'm so sorry. I thought I could protect you by staying silent. I was wrong. I love you. Imani." She'd tucked the letter deep in the roses and orchids where no one would find it unless something terrible happened. Then she'd walked down the aisle alone, no father to give her away, no mother at her side, and married Ethan Whitmore while Harrison watched with that cold smile. And the entire time she was screaming inside. While Imani was suffering in silence, I drove to Silver Creek Mine. April 22nd, 2026, the night before my daughter's wedding. I hadn't been back in 23 years. I'd avoided it deliberately, drove different routes, took longer paths, anything to keep from seeing the place where James died. But tonight, I needed to be here. The access road was overgrown, cracked asphalt disappearing under prairie grass. The chain-link fence still stood, rusted and sagging. Yellow caution tape faded to white. Beyond it, the mine entrance gaped like an open wound. Boarded up. Condemned. Forgotten. I parked my 15-year-old Honda Civic and got out. The November wind cut across the empty space, bitter and relentless. The temperature was 38 degrees. No birds sang. No insects hummed. Just silence and the whisper of dead grass. The memorial plaque was barely readable, weathered by 2 decades of Wyoming winters. In memory of the Silver Creek, 14 January 15th, 2003, 14 names etched in bronze. James Alexander Green, 4th from the top. I traced his name with one finger. The metal was ice cold. "Baby, I'm going to finish it tomorrow," I said to the silence. "Everything we talked about that last night, making this place safer, holding them accountable. I'm going to burn his empire down." The wind was my only answer. I pulled James's pencil from my purse. The wood felt warm despite the cold, worn smooth from 23 years of carrying it everywhere. "Build to last," I whispered, reading the barely visible engraving. "She chose him," I said to the empty prairie. "Our daughter fell in love with the son of the man who killed you. And tomorrow, I'm going to destroy her wedding day to get justice for you." I stood there until my fingers went numb, until the sun started dropping toward the horizon. Around me, the empty prairie stretched forever, harsh, unforgiving, beautiful in its desolation. This land had taken so much from me. My husband, my youth, 23 years of my life spent working 3 jobs, raising a daughter alone, building a case that might still fall apart. But it had also made me strong enough to fight back. I kissed my fingers, pressed them to James's name one last time. "Tomorrow," I promised. "For you, for all of them. For every person Harrison Whitmore destroyed while building his legacy on lies." I got back in my car and drove toward Gillette, toward the wedding. Toward the moment I'd been planning for months. The silence of Silver Creek followed me all the way home. The wedding morning, April 23rd, 2026, 3 people prepared for battle. I stood in front of my closet, holding the purple dress I'd bought 3 weeks ago. $89 from JCPenney on sale. Simple, elegant. With a jacket that had deep pockets. Ruby Washington was helping me with my hair, pressing it straight, pinning it into a neat bun. "You look like you're going to war," she said softly. "I am." I checked my purse. James's drafting pencil. My phone, fully charged. A small flash drive with copies of all the evidence in case something went wrong. And a photo of James in his hard hat, smiling at the camera 3 days before he died. My phone buzzed. Kenneth Hayes from Chicago. "The FBI is in position. 3 agents, plainclothes, seated at table 12. They have arrest warrants ready. The moment we present the evidence, they move. What if Harrison runs? He won't. Men like him don't run. They fight. And that's when they make mistakes." I hung up, looked at myself in the mirror. 67 years old. Gray hair, lines around my eyes, hands roughened by decades of work. But strong. Still standing. Still fighting. Harrison Whitmore stood in his study, practicing his speech. "It's remarkable that Savannah finally has what she deserves. A real family, unlike what her mother could provide with her limited means." He'd been perfecting this speech for weeks, every word designed to humiliate, every pause calculated to let the meaning sink in. Thomas Rivera knocked on the door. "Sir, everything's ready for the reception." "Good," Harrison smiled. "And the girl? Imani? She understands the arrangement?" "She hasn't contacted anyone, hasn't tried to warn her mother. I think she's too scared." "Good. Fear is useful. It keeps people compliant." Harrison poured himself scotch, a 50-year-old single malt, $3,000 a bottle, and savored it. Tonight, he'd destroy Leona Green's credibility in front of 300 witnesses. He'd secure his empire. He'd make sure no one ever questioned his power again. What he didn't know was that Thomas Rivera was wearing a wire, and every word he said was being recorded by the FBI. Imani sat in front of the mirror while the makeup artist worked on her face. Her bridesmaids, 3 college friends, were laughing and drinking mimosas. But Imani felt like she was underwater. Everything sounded distant, muffled. In 4 hours, she'd walk down that aisle. In 6 hours, Harrison would give his toast. In 6 hours and 12 minutes, he'd humiliate my mother while I sat silent. And I'd lose her forever. The makeup artist held up a mirror. "What do you think?" Imani looked at herself. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect white dress hanging behind her. She looked like a bride. She felt like a sacrifice. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Her hand moved to the bouquet on the table. White roses and orchids, 87 flowers arranged perfectly. And hidden deep inside, the letter I'd written. The confession that would only be found if everything went wrong. A bridesmaid squealed. 4 hours until you're Mrs. Whitmore." Imani forced a smile. But inside, she was screaming for someone to save her, for someone to see that she was drowning, for someone to understand that silence wasn't safety. It was surrender. She just didn't know that across town, I was preparing to do exactly that. 3 people, 3 plans, 1 wedding. Only one would survive the night. At 5:47 p.m., I arrived at the Gillette Grand Hotel. The ceremony would start in 13 minutes. The confrontation would happen in approximately 98 minutes, and Harrison Whitmore's empire would fall in 117 minutes. I just had to make sure my daughter survived it. I touched James's pencil in my purse one more time. "Build to last," I whispered. Then I walked into the ballroom to watch my daughter marry the son of the man who killed her father. The reckoning was coming. The ceremony began at exactly 6 p.m. Golden hour light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Gillette Grand Hotel ballroom. 300 guests filled white chairs arranged in perfect rows. A string quartet played Pachelbel's Canon in D. I sat in the back row, not with family, not in the reserved section. Row 17, seat 4, next to the emergency exit. Ruby squeezed my hand. "You ready?" "I've been ready for 23 years. The processional started. Bridesmaids in champagne silk walked down the aisle, groomsmen in charcoal suits. Then Ethan appeared at the altar, hands clasped, face unreadable. I wondered if he was thinking about the wire the FBI had given him, taped to his chest under his tuxedo shirt. The music changed to "Here Comes the Bride." Imani appeared at the back of the ballroom. She walked alone down that long aisle. No father to give her away, no mother at her side, wearing $32,000 worth of ivory silk and lace. Her face was perfectly made up, but I could see the truth, the terror in her eyes, the way her hands trembled on the bouquet. Our eyes met for half a second as she passed my row. I saw the apology there, the fear, the silent plea. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." She didn't know I already knew about Harrison's threats. Didn't know that Ethan had told me everything 3 days ago. Didn't know that we were about to save her. She just thought she was alone. The officiant began. Traditional vows, carefully chosen readings about love and commitment. Imani's voice shook when she said "I do." Ethan stayed steady, but I saw his jaw clench when he looked at his father in the front row. They exchanged rings. The officiant pronounced them married. They kissed, brief, formal, joyless. Applause filled the ballroom. Harrison Whitmore stood in the front row with that cold smile, surveying his victory. His son married to my daughter, 2 families bound together, his empire protected by blood. He had no idea what was coming. The reception hall was stunning. Round tables with crystal centerpieces, white roses and hydrangeas, chandeliers casting warm light across 300 guests in evening wear. The head table sat on a raised platform. Imani and Ethan in the center, wedding party flanking them. Harrison and his wife to Ethan's right, positioned like royalty overseeing their kingdom. I found my assigned table, number 17, near the kitchen, far from the action. Ashley Brooks sat 2 tables over, her camera crew positioned as wedding videographers. Thomas Rivera was at table 9, wearing a wire under his dress shirt. Kenneth Hayes was watching via live stream from Chicago, ready to coordinate with the FBI. 3 federal agents sat at table 12 in evening wear, looking like any other guests. Special Agent Victoria Chen, 42 years old, had arrest warrants in her purse. Everyone was in position. Dinner service began. Filet mignon, roasted vegetables, food I couldn't taste. At the head table, Imani pushed food around her plate. Ethan leaned close, whispering something. She nodded, but didn't look at him. Then the servers cleared the main course. The room quieted. Harrison stood. He picked up his champagne glass. Cristal, probably $2,300 a bottle. Adjusted his $8,000 suit. Looked out at 300 faces, all turning toward him with expectation. This was his moment, his stage, his chance to prove his superiority. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice carried effortlessly across the ballroom. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate this joyous occasion." I reached into my purse, touched James's pencil, felt the worn wood under my fingers. Build to last. "I want to talk about family," Harrison continued, "about what it truly means to provide for a child, to give them the foundation they deserve." At the head table, Imani's shoulders went rigid. 23 years ago, tragedy struck our community. Harrison paused, letting the weight settle. Good, hard-working men died at Silver Creek Mine. Among them was James Green, Imani's father, a man who left behind a 3-month-old daughter and a woman who tried her best. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People shifted uncomfortably. Leona Green worked hard, I'll give her that. His tone made it clear what he thought of my work. But raising a child requires more than just determination. It requires resources, stability, the kind of security that comes from family wealth, from generations of careful stewardship. My hand tightened on James's pencil. "Today I'm grateful." Harrison's voice grew stronger, more confident. "That Imani finally has what every child deserves, what she was denied for so long, a real family." Someone at his table laughed, a woman dripping in diamonds. "The Whitmore name carries weight in this state. It opens doors. It provides opportunities that others," he looked directly at me, "simply cannot offer. Opportunities that no amount of determination or hard work from a single mother in a small apartment can provide." More laughter now, uncomfortable, but present. "So let's raise our glasses to Imani, finally finding the stability, the security, the resources she deserved all along. To the future she'll build with my son, under the protection and provision of the Whitmore legacy." He raised his glass high. The room stayed mostly silent. A few people reluctantly lifted their champagne. I stood up. Every head turned. The room went absolutely silent. Harrison's smile tightened at the edges, but he kept it in place. He hadn't expected me to respond. He thought I'd sit there, humiliated, silent, He'd miscalculated. "That was beautiful, Mr. Whitmore," I said, my voice steady and clear, carrying across the ballroom. "Really moving. Such eloquent words about providing for children and building legacies." I walked toward the center of the room where everyone could see me. My $89 purple dress probably looked cheap compared to the designer gowns around me, but I stood tall. "But before we drink to the future," I continued, "I think everyone here should understand exactly how that Whitmore legacy was built, what it actually cost, and who paid the price." I caught Ashley's eye. She nodded once. The projection screens flickered to life behind Harrison. His head whipped around. The first image appeared, a bank transfer document. "That's $8.5 million, I said clearly. "Transferred from Whitmore Holdings LLC to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, dated over the past 18 months. The signature at the bottom was clearly visible on the massive screens. Imani L. Green. "That's my daughter's signature," I said. "Except Imani never signed these documents, never saw them, never authorized any transfers. Someone forged her name." Gasps erupted. People started murmuring. Harrison's face drained of color. "The next slide, please." Another forged document appeared. Then another. Then another. 13 documents total, I said. Environmental impact reports for Summit Ridge Mine, safety inspection waivers, permit applications, all with my daughter's forged signature, all designed to make her the scapegoat if Harrison Whitmore's cost-cutting measures caused another disaster. The murmuring grew louder. "Summit Ridge Mine," I continued, "currently under construction 15 miles north of Gillette, uses grade 50 steel in load-bearing structures that require grade 60. Sound familiar?" The next slide showed the Silver Creek incident report from 2003. 23 years ago, Harrison Whitmore approved the use of grade 40 steel instead of grade 60 at Silver Creek Mine. Cost savings, $340,000. Human cost, 14 men dead, including my husband. My voice didn't shake, not once. James Alexander Green, age 39. Dennis Washington, age 41. Miguel Rivera, age 36. I read all 14 names, slowly, clearly, making sure everyone heard. The room was dead silent now except for my voice. The final slide appeared. Security camera footage from Harrison's office, dated 3 months ago. The video played. Harrison at his desk, practicing Imani's signature, over and over. Then talking to Thomas Rivera, Harrison's voice, on video. "If this blows up, the black girl takes the fall. Her word against ours. Who do you think they'll believe?" The room exploded. Shouts, gasps, chairs scraping, people standing, cameras flashing. Harrison grabbed the podium, knuckles white. "This is slander. Fabricated evidence. I'll sue. With what money?" Ashley Brooks stood, her voice ringing out. "The FBI froze $47 million in Whitmore Energy assets at 6 o'clock this morning." More chaos. People pushing toward exits. Someone shouting for security. The main doors opened. 3 FBI agents walked in, led by Special Agent Victoria Chen. "Harrison Whitmore III, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, racketeering, forgery, criminal conspiracy, and manslaughter in the deaths of 14 men at Silver Creek Mine on January 15, 2003. The snap of handcuffs echoed through the suddenly quiet ballroom. Harrison's eyes found mine as they led him toward the door. No cold smile now, just naked hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." 30 minutes after Harrison's arrest, I found Imani in the bridal suite. She was still in her wedding dress, makeup ruined by tears, sitting on the edge of a velvet couch. Ethan stood by the window. Ruby had followed me in, providing silent support. "Mom," Imani's voice was broken. I knew he was going to humiliate you, and I just sat there. I know you did, baby." Her head jerked up. "You know? Ethan told me 3 days ago, about the lunch meeting, the threats, the choice Harrison forced you to make." Fresh tears streamed down her face. "Then why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you tell me you knew?" I sat down beside her, careful not to crowd her. "Because you were trying to protect me, and I was trying to protect you. And we were both drowning in silence, thinking we were alone. I should have trusted you." Yes. The honesty felt brutal, but necessary. You should have, but I understand why you didn't. Harrison is a master manipulator. He's been doing this for 40 years. You're 26. You were scared and pregnant and trapped. I chose wrong, she whispered. You chose survival. There's a difference. Ethan turned from the window. Mrs. Green, I'm sorry. I should have told Imani the truth from the beginning. About Silver Creek, about my father, about everything. You were trying to protect her, too, I said. We all were, and we all kept secrets thinking it was the right thing to do. Ruby spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. Y'all spent so much time protecting each other in silence that you forgot you were on the same side. Silence doesn't protect anyone. It just gives power to people like Harrison Whitmore. Imani looked at me, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Can you forgive me, Mom? I thought about that question carefully, about the pain of watching her sit silent at the head table, about 23 years of fighting alone, about the lies we'd all told each other. I understand why you did what you did, I said slowly, but understanding doesn't erase the pain. For weeks, I thought my daughter had chosen the man who killed her father over me. That hurt, Imani. That hurt in ways I can't just forgive because the truth came out. Her face crumpled. What do I do? You live with it. You learn from it. You make sure you never let fear silence you again. I stood, my legs suddenly heavy. And you give me time. How much time? I don't know. The answer felt cruel, but honest. 26 years of fighting for you, and in the critical moment, you believed silence was the answer. That's going to take time to heal. Ethan stepped forward. Mrs. Green, I'll take care of her. I promise you that. I reached into my purse and pulled out James's drafting pencil. The wood felt warm from being carried close to my heart for 23 years. Your father built his empire on lies, I said, pressing it into Ethan's palm. Build your family on truth. He stared at it, then at me. This was your husband's. He carried it every day at Silver Creek. It survived the collapse when he didn't. My voice caught. It survived everything else too. Let it remind you what real strength looks like. Not power, not control, but integrity. Ethan's fingers closed around it. Thank you. I looked at Imani one last time. She was still crying, quieter now. Take care of each other, I said. Take care of that baby. And when the trial comes, tell the truth. All of it, no matter how hard it gets. Mom, please. Imani started to stand. I need to go. I walked to the door, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind me, I heard Imani's breath hitch, heard Ethan's murmured comfort. Ruby followed me into the hallway. You okay, honey? No, but I will be. 6 months later, October 15th, 2026, I stood in a federal courtroom in Cheyenne, Wyoming. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. Harrison Whitmore sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his $8,000 suits replaced by prison issue. His lawyers, a team of 6 from New York, had tried everything, challenged the evidence, attacked the witnesses, claimed the video footage was manipulated. But Thomas Rivera had kept meticulous records for 20 years. Ashley Brooks had published a devastating investigative series, and the FBI had frozen every asset, traced every offshore account, documented every crime. The courtroom was packed. Families of the Silver Creek 14 filled the gallery. Media lined the walls. Imani sat in the back row, 8 months pregnant, Ethan beside her. We hadn't spoken much in 6 months. A few phone calls, carefully polite. Both of us trying to figure out how to rebuild what Harrison had broken. The prosecutor called me as the final witness. Mrs. Green, can you explain to the jury what happens when grade 40 steel is used in structures requiring grade 60? I looked at the jury, 12 people who would decide Harrison's fate. Grade 40 steel has a yield strength of 40,000 pounds per square inch, I said clearly. Grade 60 is 60,000 psi, 50% stronger. In a mine shaft bearing millions of pounds of rock and earth, that difference is the difference between safety and catastrophe. I paused, letting that sink in. It's the difference between 14 men coming home to their families and 14 widows standing in the snow, watching rescue lights fade. It's the difference between my daughter knowing her father and growing up with only a pencil that says "Build to Last." Harrison's attorney stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Green, isn't it true you stole company documents in 2003? Yes. So you're a thief. How can we trust your testimony? I looked directly at the jury. I'm a widow who was denied justice for 23 years. I'm a mother who worked 3 jobs to give my daughter a future. I'm an engineer who knows the difference between negligence and murder. My voice grew stronger. And I'm a black woman who's been told my whole life that my word doesn't matter against men like your client, that I should stay quiet, keep my head down, accept that powerful white men can do whatever they want. I stood up straighter. But today, in this courtroom, my word does matter. The truth matters. And 14 dead men finally get justice. The gallery burst into applause. The judge's gavel came down, but he let it continue for a moment before calling for order. 2 days later, the jury returned. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, racketeering, forgery, criminal conspiracy, 14 counts of manslaughter. Sentencing: 25 years in federal prison. $150 million in restitution to the families of the Silver Creek 14. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Green, how do you feel? I looked at the cameras, thought about James, thought about all the years of silence. I feel like my husband can finally rest. Across the crowd, I saw Imani watching. Our eyes met. She nodded once, a small acknowledgement. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something. 1 year later, April 23, 2027, we gathered at Silver Creek Mine. The abandoned site looked different now. The chain-link fence had been replaced with a proper memorial wall, the 14 names etched in granite, walking paths lined with benches, a small garden maintained by volunteers. And today, we were planting trees. 14 aspens, 1 for each man who died. The community came out, families of the victims, Ashley Brooks with her camera, Thomas Rivera, who testified at the trial and then resigned from Whitmore Energy, Pastor Diane Mitchell from our church, Ruby Washington, always at my side, and Imani, carrying 3-month-old baby James. She'd named him after his grandfather, James Ethan Whitmore, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. My husband's eyes. Ethan spoke first, standing beside the memorial wall. My father taught me that strength meant control, that showing emotion was weakness, that the Whitmore name meant power. He paused. It took me 29 years to understand that real strength is admitting when you're wrong, that real building means creating something that lasts because it's built on truth, not lies. Quiet applause rippled through the gathering. Imani stood beside me, holding baby James. We'd been working together for 6 months now at the James Green Educational Foundation, me as executive director, her as outreach coordinator. We showed up, did the work, slowly rebuilt trust. We still hadn't fully reconciled. Maybe we never would. But we were present. That counted for something. Mom, Imani said softly, can we plant Dad's tree together? I nodded. We walked to the spot marked for James Alexander Green's memorial tree. Ethan carried the young aspen. Baby James watched with wide, curious eyes. We dug together, my weathered hands and Imani's younger ones, creating space for roots to grow. Imani guided the root ball into the earth. Ethan steadied the trunk. I filled in the soil, patting it down firmly. This one's for your grandpa, I told baby James, the one you're named after. Because he was brave, Imani added, her voice thick with emotion. And he helped people. I placed my hand on the slim trunk of the aspen, feeling the life in it. These trees would grow here for 50 years, maybe more. A living memorial, built to last. After the ceremony, Imani and I walked the memorial path together. Baby James had fallen asleep against her shoulder. Mom, I know I can't fix what I did. No, I agreed. You can't. But I can keep building forward. I can make sure James grows up knowing that silence isn't safety, that speaking truth, even when your voice shakes, is the only way to honor the people we've lost. I stopped walking, looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. You're right, I said. And you're doing it. Every day at the foundation. Every time you tell James's story to donors. Every time you speak up instead of staying silent. Are we okay, Mom? We're getting there, I said honestly. We're not where we were. We probably never will be. But we're here. That's something. Baby James stirred, made a small sound. Imani adjusted him gently. He has Dad's eyes, I said. I know. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I want him to know his grandfather's legacy. Not how he died, but what we built after. I reached into my purse, the same purse I'd carried for 23 years, and pulled out James's pencil. I'd given it to Ethan at the wedding, but he'd returned it during the trial with a note. This belongs to your family. We're just borrowing its wisdom. Keep this safe, I said, placing it in Imani's hand. Until he's old enough. She traced the worn engraving. Build to last. That's right, baby. We stood together, 3 generations, while Wyoming wind moved through the young aspens. Around us, the memorial held 14 names, 14 trees, the weight of 23 years finally acknowledged. Ruby joined us, linking her arm through mine. Y'all did good today. I looked at the trees, at the family's gathering, at my daughter and grandson. We did, I said. We really did. I'm Leona Marie Green. I'm 68 years old now. People call what I did revenge. I call it restoration, not restoring what was lost. My husband, those 23 years, my daughter's innocence, those can never be rebuilt. But restoring what must exist. Integrity, justice, the belief that even shattered foundations can support new growth. The James Green Educational Foundation has helped 847 children of mining families attend college. We've pushed for stronger safety regulations across Wyoming. We've trained a new generation of engineers who understand that cutting corners doesn't just cost money, it costs lives. Harrison Whitmore will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. He's 70 years old now. He'll die there. Imani and Ethan's marriage survived. Barely. They went through 2 years of couples therapy, learned to build a foundation of truth instead of secrets. Baby James is 2 years old now. He knows his grandfather's name, knows the story of the pencil, knows that real strength isn't silence. And me? I still carry that pencil every day, still go to work at the foundation, still fight for justice when I see corners being cut. But I've learned something important. God doesn't call us to be comfortable. He calls us to be courageous. When I finally stopped waiting for someone else to deliver justice and started building it myself, that's when healing began. Not just for me, but for an entire community. Love without accountability becomes complicity. Family without truth becomes a prison. And silence, even silence meant to protect, always ends up protecting the wrong people. So here's what I want you to remember. If you see injustice, speak, even if your voice shakes. If powerful people tell you to stay quiet, speak louder. If someone says your word doesn't matter because of your age, your gender, your race, prove them wrong. I was 67 years old when I stood in that ballroom and exposed Harrison Whitmore. Some people said I was too old to fight, that I should let it go, that I should be grateful for what little I had. But I'd spent 23 years building a case, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. And when that moment came, I was ready. Build your foundations on truth, even when lies seem easier. Speak up, even when your voice shakes. And remember, the strongest structures aren't the ones built quickly or cheaply. They're the ones built to last. My name is Leona Marie Green. I'm a 68-year-old Black woman. I'm a widow, a mother, a grandmother, an engineer. And I'm the woman who brought down a corporate empire with nothing but patience, evidence, and the truth. If I can do it, so can you. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Not for me, for the Leonas out there who are still fighting, for the widows who were told to stay quiet, for the mothers protecting their children, for the grandmothers who know that silence protects only the powerful. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Your fight matters. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Let's see how far this story travels. And if you're facing your own Harrison Whitmore, whether it's a corrupt boss, an abusive family member, or a system designed to keep you silent, remember, document everything. Build your case. Wait for the right moment. And when that moment comes, stand up. Because the truth, told at the right time, by the right person, can bring down empires. Build to last.